All right, I guess we're going to address today the news of the week concerning the big dust up with TPUSA versus America First with Nick Fuentes. Obviously, by now, if you're in tune with that whole cluster F, you probably know that he also fought Fuentes with the host of another program called America First, Sebastian Gorka. So I like to set out my position first before everyone decides to mischaracterize it. I don't think that you can filter out opinions that are even ones you think are abhorrent just because they are extremely, they're provocative and they come up and try to force you into a corner. Obviously, if you have people who come and try to ask questions that are, I guess, uncomfortable, you have the prerogative to answer any way you can. But when you're a person who's a public speaker, especially someone in, uh, political discussions and talking especially about freedom of speech, you can't necessarily go and complain when people come to your event, ask you things that are very, very uncomfortable, and then say, well, these are just trolls. Now, I am not going to try to pretend that what they're doing is not trolling, but that's not an excuse to just ignore literally everything they say. Now, as for the topic itself, there is a growing rift in the conservative movement. I don't know how deep it is, but it's more a generational divide than anything between what I would say are the Gen Z Zoomer conservatives and some of the ones who might be millennial or Gen X. And a lot of it centers around the role of religion, race, and citizenship in the conservative movement. So when I'm talking about this, please be aware that I don't subscribe to a movement. And if you think I'm trying to tell you which movement you can be a part of, it's not really my problem. I don't care. I think that people who want to be a part of a movement eventually have to deal with the other people that claim to be part of it not getting along with them. So I'm going to introduce this clip from Paul Joseph Watson addressing it. I did start it in the middle, but he kind of takes a little while to get to the point.
So by supporting massive waves of legal immigration, Conservative Inc. seems to be signing the death warrant for the Republican Party, and indeed for Donald Trump in a more short-term sense. We also have this idea, and this is what's been challenged when these, quote, saboteurs invade these TPUSA events, that these migrants are coming in and, starting businesses, hiring Americans. They're not doing that. The stats show they're working for giant soul-sucking corporations like Walmart. They're really not adding much to the culture or indeed to the economy. And again, 75% of them vote Democrat. These are the questions that are being asked at these TPUSA events. And I've met Charlie Kirk. He's a nice guy. This is not an attack on Charlie Kirk, but this needs to be addressed because people want me to talk about it. You have these young, conservative, you could call them more fringe right individuals showing up, asking these questions to the point where last night in Ohio, they dominated like 8 out of the 10 questions, and they're promising a Groyper war to go out to all these events with Steven Crowder, Ben Shapiro, Charlie Kirk, and just bombard them with these same grievances. And it's because they're either refusing to allow them into the debates, to the Q&As, or just giving them false answers to the questions or not even addressing the questions that this has snowballed. There are other grievances with Israel. Of course, the far right has this bizarre fetish with blaming Israel and Jews for everything, which I've never subscribed to and don't. But then mainstream conservatives, Conservative Inc., also has a fetish with constantly genuflecting and prostrating themselves for Israel. Even when we literally had a few weeks ago the story that Israel had spy devices on the White House lawn, eavesdropping on the Trump administration. And in fact, last night, during this fracas, you could call it, Charlie Kirk was asked would he support a policy that benefited America to the detriment of Israel? And his answer was basically, I love Israel. That's one of their grievances. This is why this is bubbling up, because it's not being addressed, why a lot of conservative ink seems to place Israel before the United States of America in many aspects. Their other gripe is that conservative ink increasingly appears to be shifting left and adopting positions that progressives stood for 10 years ago, especially with the whole degeneracy LGBT angle. Like, how many selfies with drag queens do you need at this point?
So I will try to unpack some of those. I would say that I agree with a lot of what Paul Joseph Watson is saying. Even with the stuff about, while the far right does fetishize Israel, there is a lot of genuflecting by the Republican Party. I personally, and this is what's so ridiculous, even as a former IDF serviceman, when I hear Lindsey Graham basically, getting the willies whenever anything about Israel comes up, and sometimes he gets into a frenzy when he's trying to support them, it is really, really creepy to me. And I'm sure it is to some people who observe, who don't have as much of a direct connection. But the other issues I think that I would agree with, as far as the Fuentes people, this is before I get to the stuff that I disagree with. I don't think that if you are calling yourself a Christian conservative, okay, that's very important, like Charlie Kirk does. If you call yourself a Christian conservative, you cannot support gay marriage, and you probably should not associate with many of these people that he associates with. Now, do I think he should not be allowed to be friends with Rob Smith, the gay person who was with him at the gay guy? He was also gay and black, but whatever. Let's focus on one at a time. So Rob Smith was at this event. He was the co-host of the event. And look, there has to be a certain line. A lot of people want to claim that there's no contradiction between being gay and a Christian. Look, this is a free country, but a free country doesn't mean freedom from contradictions. And these people who do consider themselves to be gay and Christian, they have to realize that religions are based on a number of core beliefs and creeds. And if you want to deflect from your own flaws, and look, I personally, I am Jewish, and this probably complicates the video so much, enough. I'm not going to put myself out there as a representative of, proselytizing for my religion if I support something that is contrary to my religion, right? It's there. You do have to make a choice. So, yes, I would say that especially if you're a Christian conservative, you cannot support the LGBT agenda in any shape or form. Okay? It's a very important distinction. Now, there are people who are secular conservatives or who believe in, traditional cultural values, but from a more layman standpoint, who don't necessarily have a very spiritual lifestyle. That is a little bit of a separate topic. I would like to say, though, that there is this video that I found here, and it goes along with this idea that the Fuentes faction, they claim that they're the paleo-conservatives. They're the people who actually stand up for the true conservatism that happened before the neocons started to take control back in I guess it would be the early 80s. So here's a clip of Pat Buchanan back in I guess this would be 1992.
In a 9 p.m. speech in a tiny town in southern Georgia called Fitzgerald. There were those workers at the James River paper mill in northern New Hampshire in a town called Groveton. Tough, hardy men. None of them would say a word to me as I came down the line. shaking their hands one by one. They were under threat of losing their jobs at Christmas. And as I moved down the line, one tough fellow about my age just looked up and said to me, "Save our jobs." Then there was the legal secretary that I met at the Manchester airport on Christmas Day, who came running up to me and said, "Mr. Buchanan, I'm going to vote for you." And then she broke down weeping, and she said, "I've lost my job, I don't have any money, and they're going to take away my little girl. What am I going to do?" My friends, these people are our people. They don't read Adam Smith or Edmund Burke, but they come from the same schoolyards and the same playgrounds and towns as we came from. They share our beliefs and our convictions, our hopes and our dreams. These are the conservatives of the heart. They are our people, and we need to reconnect with them. We need to let them know we know how bad they're hurting. They don't expect miracles of us, but they need to know we care. They were the people, my friends. They were the people of Hayfork, a tiny town up in California's Trinity Alps, a town that is now under a sentence of death because a federal judge has set aside 9 million acres for the habitat of the spotted owl, forgetting about the habitat of the men and women who live and work in Hayfork.
So up till now, these are some important points. Pat Buchanan speaking very much against the grain of American culture in 1992, because yes, environmentalism had taken hold, and I guess it's to his credit, he was one of the few people to really, I guess, provide an alternative view on it and push back and say, hey, look, spotted owl, great, but we have to look after the people who actually live there too. Aren't they entitled to some rights as well?
And there were the brave people. And there were the brave people of Koreatown who took the worst of those LA riots, but still live the family values we treasure, and who still deeply believe in the American dream.
So this is the part where I'll put a pin in. And notice this last line about Koreatown and what Nick Fuentes says in his video here.
Millions of dollars from donors, but we have the truth fundamentally, but we also are having fun. We're funny, we have the energy, the excitement, and all the rest. But never forget why this is happening. Why is this happening? People might ask. We are directing this energy, this anger, righteous indignation at these people because of what they stand for. If you're in Turning Point USA, if you're Charlie Kirk, if you're in the leadership, and we saw it was put on full display tonight, you are anti-white, you are anti-American, your allegiance lies with another country, you stand against God and the natural order. It could not have been more perfect because we got the whole platter, we got the whole buffet of every issue where Turning Point USA is running a deficit in representing our country, representing our faith, representing our people, and by people I mean our kin, from talking about immigration.
By people, I mean our kin, so you can take that whatever way you want.
We learned that Charlie Kirk doesn't care if America becomes minority white. It does not matter if we
So he goes out and says that it is an issue of race.
Bring in more than 1 million immigrants per year. It does not matter if they take our jobs, because as long as they're not border jumpers or line cutters, they get to come here and make America great. Totally evading questions about the electoral winter. Never mind the fact that the people coming here don't vote for Republicans. If they're not voting for Republicans, you can look at the rest of the data. At every metric across the board, they oppose our values, they oppose our principles, where they oppose gun ownership, they oppose free speech. Of course, all of this is only symptomatic of the larger scenario here, the larger situation, which is not simply that they're coming here and they're voting for Democrats, which is a problem. It's not simply that they're coming here and they don't believe in the Second Amendment and the Constitution and all that, which is still a problem. It's because they come here and they're not us. They will never be us. They can never assimilate to become the same American texture that we knew, that we value, by the way. Charlie Kirk said tonight to people wearing MAGA hats, Trump shirts, he said that if you oppose the ethnic, cultural, whatever you want to call it, the genocide, the destruction of the historic American nation, you're a racist.
So look, I guess it's clear what he means, but it is a little bit different from what Pat Buchanan said right there. Let's rewind.
Work in Hayfork. And there were the brave people. And there were the brave people of Koreatown who took the worst of those LA riots, but still live the family values we treasure, and who still deeply believe in the American dream. Friends, in these wonderful...
So notice that the Koreatown example, that was in 1991 with the LA riots. You had Asian Americans who took to the rooftops with firearms and defended their stores from rioters who were from mainly from the Black and Hispanic community of Los Angeles. And Pat Buchanan did cite them as an example of people who were not white and who did embrace American values. So, look, I am not going to claim that legal immigration or any immigration is going to make America better. I would say that what Charlie Kirk said was concerning stapling green cards to diplomas was ridiculous. And lo and behold, a lot of people agree with me. Nicholas Fuentes said that too, that it's ridiculous. But he said, thank you to the courageous and patriotic Michelle Malkin for calling out Charlie Kirk's radical and anti-American first views on immigration. And thank you to the great JLP Talk for speaking out against TPUSA's promotion of a pro-gay, anti-Christian social agenda. But the thing is, so good. I guess if you know Jesse Lee Peterson, he is a virulently, he is very against homosexuality. But he also, he happens to be, in many ways, people say he's like the most anti-black black pastor you could get. And he says very derogatory things about black people. But it's funny that he cites Michelle Malkin because she did put out an article a little earlier in the day where she said that stapling green cards to diplomas is stupid and suicidal. But I think that if you know by now Nick Fuentes' views on the Jews and on all of that, it's a little strange that he would say that and congratulate her when it apparently, so she's, first of all, this person calls her a dark-skilled Filipino woman, but she is Filipino. Okay, so he's citing the example of a woman who did immigrate, or she was actually adopted, went to come here, raised Catholic, and married a Jewish husband. And so this is the real question I want to ask to the people in the audience. So are you really agreeing with Michelle Malkin, and would you stand on the same stage with Michelle Malkin and embrace her as your, friend and fellow conservative? Because she's done it. First of all, she isn't a white person, right? And Nick Fuentes' premise is that if you are immigrating to the United States, you really don't belong here. And let's hear it one more time.
Moral winter. Never mind the fact that the people coming here don't vote for Republicans. If they're not voting for Republicans, you can look at the rest of the data. At every metric across the board, they oppose our values, they oppose our principles, where they oppose gun ownership, they oppose free speech. Of course, all of this is only symptomatic of the larger scenario here, the larger situation, which is not simply that they're coming here and they're voting for Democrats, which is a problem. It's not simply that they're coming here and they don't believe in the Second Amendment and the Constitution and all that, which is still a problem. It's because they come here and they're not us. They will never be us. They can never assimilate to become the same American texture that we knew, that we value, by the way. Charlie Kirk said tonight to people wearing MAGA hats, Trump shirts.
So by definition, Michelle Malkin herself couldn't conform to Nick Fuentes' status of being an American because she in of herself, she's Filipino, she's married to a Jewish person as a Catholic. Traditionally, Catholics are supposed to marry other people who accept the, I guess, I don't know what the fuck you guys do. I think you have to accept communion. But in any case, you have to decide at a certain point how tough of a standard you have for what an American person is. And this is really where we start to arrive at the fact that a purity test inevitably starts to filter out people that otherwise might be on your side. So there have been a number of people who opined on this topic in the past day or two who I'm a little, I guess I understand why they're criticizing Charlie Kirk. Many of them are, of course, devout Christians like JLP. I think Amazing Lucas happens to be pretty devoutly Christian, who are saying, look, we oppose the alphabet mafia. We don't want the LGBTs taking over and supporting this degeneracy and everything. But the fact is, okay, if that's your choice, that's your choice. I personally, I don't belong to the movement anyway. I don't support gay marriage. I'm not going to pretend that I support having this acceptance of what I think is a joke. I think gay marriage is an absolute and total, it's comic. But the fact is that I don't have, if I don't support gay marriage and the Republican Party starts to promote gay marriage, that's kind of a reason why I would support them less, right? Or I wouldn't contribute to certain candidates. But the fact is, it's not as big of a wedge issue for me, because for me, the reason I supported Rand Paul in 2016 was because of the deficit. It was because of the school choice, because of Obamacare, because of the Second Amendment. All of those things are things that I support him for. At the time, I really did not have much of a focus on immigration, and it took me a while to understand really what the problem is. So, yes, through time, I was able to understand that it is a much bigger problem than what I thought it was. Beyond that, I think that you have to acknowledge the fact that these people who are trying to create this, real test of whether a person is conservative, in some cases they're going to find out that they're going to be screened out too. So Amazing Lucas, some of these other people who are, there's people like Nuance Bro who are supporting Nick Fuentes. They're basically cheering him on. Why? Because they don't like Charlie Kirk. Because they think that Charlie Kirk is a fraud. Because they think that he's... Okay, so you're going to knock Charlie Kirk off, and then what will come instead of him, who knows? But the fact is that Conservative Inc. has to be replaced by something. And if that something is the Nick Fuentes movement, then a lot of you people are going to be left out too. And then what are you going to do? You're going to create a second movement. So there's going to be a movement of white nationalists. And I think I can safely call these people white nationalists. They don't believe that there should be a non-white majority in America. I personally don't care either way. Okay, I'm technically biracial because one of my parents was from the Middle East, from Iraq. So that's your issue. It's not mine. But we're talking about a real problem when people start to complain, well, Charlie Kirk isn't a real conservative, but eventually you're going to be kicked out of this movement too. And I'll tell you what, I do think that this shows that whether you're on Fuentes' side or you're on Charlie Kirk's side, and I think Charlie Kirk has lost a lot of support, and the Fuentes people are causing some real damage to his organization. But this does show that we do need to break up the two-party system in America. We see the same thing on the left between the corporate Democrats and the progressive Democrats. We see the same thing among libertarians. There's libertarians who are completely corporate. All they care about is whether there is the freedom to bring in large amounts of illegal immigrants and be able to pay them very low amounts of money. And then on the other hand, you have the ANCAPs who they just don't believe in any sort of law or hierarchy. We see, so look, there's a lot of room in America for different points of view in terms of the system. Okay, now this will, I believe, create a fracture within the Republican Party over time. What I would say is, if you're one of these pro, Fuentes people, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's already done it. But why has he not denounced Trump? Trump actually ran in 2016 on supporting gay marriage. He actually said that gay marriage is... So this is actually from June 1st. It says Trump's celebration of LGBT rights is met with criticism. President Trump has said that his administration would lead an effort to decriminalize homosexuality around the world, eliciting condemnation from activists who pointed to the administration. So he gets criticized by people who are left-wing, extremists for homosexuality. Trump says he's absolutely fine with Buttigieg's gay marriage. Trump, who cast himself as pro-LGBT, is now under fire. Let me see here. It's really pretty funny. So he keeps giving in. He was endorsed by LGBT Republican group for the 2020 election. Even says here, Kellyanne Conway, his spokesperson, Trump first president to take office approving of gay marriage. So if you're an America firster, and if you're one of these people, and it's not just Nick, so I'm going to say this right here. I oppose gay marriage. I don't personally vote based on that because I have other things that I think are, they're higher priority for me, because I think, really this issue is very difficult to solve without some sort of overturning of the Supreme Court ruling in 2015, Obergefell versus I don't know who the other person was, the defendant. But we're talking about this issue that you guys really care about: Jesse Lee Peterson, Amazing Lucas, Fuentes, and you're all saying, well, the line that was used during the Charlie Kirk Q&A was, how does anal sex promote conservative values? And okay, so if that's your standard, right, and you're saying that a candidate that you would support, or I guess people that you would support, if we're just talking outside of voting and electoral politics, would you support Donald Trump now? Because he is explicitly supporting gay marriage. He's also talking about decriminalizing homosexuality across the world, places like Africa. That is really a good question. Now, I think some of them would say, we don't give a shit what happens in Africa. Some of these people, for all that they're so Christian, they don't care about Christians across the world. They could care less about the fact that a lot of these people in these third world countries also happen to be Christian. I'm not saying I want them to come here. I am actually saying, yeah, I oppose letting in Salvadoran immigrants simply because they arrive here. But if you are such a Christian, if you're such a big Catholic, what's the majority religion of El Salvador? It's over 90% Catholic. And you're saying that they don't belong here. For what reason? I don't think that that's the most consistent Catholic value. And Fuentes is Catholic. And by the way, Malkin is Catholic, and most of the people in the Philippines are Catholic. Catholicism's largest, their largest populations are now in many cases in countries like, the Congo, or in countries like Nigeria, right? Anglicanism, I think, is very big in those countries too. So, look, this is a topic. I am not trying to just be a big, I'm not going to try to condemn people. I'm not trying to tell people, you should shut up. I value free speech above all. I stay, even people who, and these people do hate me, even people like that, I'm not going to condemn and tell people to ban them. And yeah, I think Sebastian Gorka, he was trying to weasel around yesterday, say, I wasn't trying to get him kicked off Twitter. I'm trying to get him de-verified. Look, the real issue here, if you oppose Nick Fuentes that much, you should confront a number of the contradictions. The contradictions are that, I guess technically, unless I'm mistaken, he supports a president that supports gay marriage, and he himself is saying, "Oh, that's a red line for me." Well, if that's a red line, stop supporting him. He also is claiming, "Oh, I'm a paleo-conservative, just like Pat Buchanan." Well, he claims that, Nick Fuentes does. He claims that people of other races, non-white races, can't be compatible with American values, and they can't be American truly. When Pat Buchanan actually cited the example of these Korean people. So maybe he simply has a small disagreement with Pat Buchanan, maybe not. I personally, I don't agree with Fuentes on almost anything. But this is something I think is going to be very interesting going forward. And look, we're living in a time when things like this, it's pretty obvious how they started. These people are a reaction to something else. And unfortunately, rather than just condemn them and say, "Oh, you're a despicable anti-Semite," like Gorka was saying yesterday, you do have to sort of fire back with real rebuttals to their points. And yeah, I would be willing to take part in that. And I'm not trying to deplatform anyone. I think these people are people I wouldn't get along with. I probably wouldn't socialize with them because we don't have that much in common. And I don't think they'd want to socialize with me. But you have to put a line in the sand between debating very uncomfortable topics and then having this affinity towards people who say things that you think are disgusting. That's the meaning of really being a free speech defender. And in that manner, yeah, Charlie Kirk, Seb Gorka, I think that they have dropped the ball on this a lot. And Charlie Kirk in general has lost a ton of credibility this week. That's about it. I know I went on a lot of tangents, but I appreciate everyone who tunes in, and I hope that you take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel. You can subscribe to me on Minds.com as well as BitChute and Subscribestar if you want to donate a few dollars to me. No pressure. All of those are at the tag Chef Leopard, at Chef Leopard, and on Gab at Starscream85, and I will talk to you later.